a sport fish. The trout in this area were introduced in 1896. The rainbows were anyway. No, well, the rainbows in here came from the Russian River in California.
What?
California, Sacramento.
There's a river called Russian.
It's called the Russian River.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, those fish were brought in, and even back in those days, the people that were involved in New Zealand back then saw the potential of introducing trout as a sport fishery. So by the time we got to the early 1900s, 1910, then people were still coming from all around the world to go trout fishing here.
What?
Trout require certain ingredients to actually be able to live, and not only to be able to live, more so to be able to breed. So trout are very fussy when they come to where they breed, how they breed, and there's elements in there that they need everything to work. A trout in a swamp, and it'll swim around and it'll live, but it won't breed.
Right.
So water temperature has trout generally need, in order they'll live in different environments, but to breed they need cold water, and someone will pull me up on this. It's got to be, I'm pretty sure, under 12 degrees centigrade. They won't breed in water that's
But
warmer.
don't they go up to the rivers to there'll be a different temperature to the lakes?
Yeah, which is why they live in the lake, and then they go up the river to breed. The beauty of the lake is that they can go from warm water, cold water pretty quickly. So they can live down deep, they can come up.
They don't prefer any particular temperature?
They prefer where the food is. So in the summertime, the water temperature gets warmer on the top, colder on the bottom. You actually have a thermocline in the water, which is a separation between cold and warm. The majority of the time they'll spend down below that, which in this lake's probably around about 7 or 8 degrees. Well, yeah, I mean
so how many metres is that?
Summertime, probably about 30 metres.
So it's quite dark. 30 metres is quite dark water, right?
Into this lake there was a native bully, and they grew anywhere from this size to this size, and the local Māori, they lived on those, where they netted them and set traps.
Yeah.
Trout came in, monstered them.
Really?
So you had
destroyed them.
So these trout literally, it wasn't by the early 1910 area, the trout on the lake were probably averaging around about 10 pound. Averaging. So they had a massive amount of food source. They didn't have to swim that fast to catch it.
Really?
Yeah. And so the lake started off in that period, and then by 1920s the trout had eaten all these fish out, and they started to get skinny, and they actually netted fish out of the lake at that particular time.
Because what are they now? What do they average now? 3 to 5?
3.5 pound is probably the average. But what they did do back then is they brought the native smelt from the Rotorua lakes, and those smelt would come up from the ocean, which pretty much a whitebait, dumped them in this lake, and that's been the whole key to the fishery. Very clean. There's a difference between living and
what should I say? Trout. What should I Google? Trout living conditions.
Trout spawning temperatures. Yeah, but they won't breed.
Hold on. As temperature rises and dissolves, oxygen decreases. Fish begin to experience stress. These stresses begin when set in well before the water temperature reaches lethal limits. So for rainbow trout.
Started this particular part of the conversation when you're talking about eating trout and why it's a little bit frowned upon in the rest of the world, and you see a lot of people releasing fish and that sort of thing, is that in this particular area trout reproduce pretty well. So if we were to introduce a total catch and release in an area like this, you would have a massive reduction in the size of the fish. So we jump in a helicopter tomorrow, we fly into the backcountry rivers. Those fish are what we call resident fish, so non-migratory like they are in the lake. So the fish here are born in the rivers. They get to about 1.5, but this sort of size, come down to the lake, they get big, they get fat, they grow really quickly because of the smelt, then they spawn. I've seen them at about 2.5.
So it's 2.5 years.
Then they'll spawn. Some of them won't. Some of them will be 3, 4.
How do you tell the age of a fish? Can you see it or just eye it roughly?
You can eye it. I mean, the only way to really tell it is they take the ear of the fish out and they measure the bit and shit. But
yeah, right.
Basically, the bigger the fish and the smaller the head, you know that it's a younger fish. And
bigger the head.
No, smaller the head, the bigger the fish.
Right. Yeah. Right. No. That makes sense. So, like, if it's so this one here, for example.
Yeah. It's what we call a maiden fish.
What does that mean?
It's a virgin. So whether the camera can see anything, but very silver through here. Mate, so when they go to spawn,
silver there.
They're silver everywhere. When they go to spawn,
they're red.
They then take on their rainbow colours, and that's why a lot of the trout out of here, if you pick it up and showed it to someone, they'd actually think it was a salmon because it's so silver.
It so looks like salmon.
Yeah. But they'll take on their rainbow colours when they spawn. And also,
What do they look more like a brown trout then?
No, they look like a rainbow trout. And when they do that and they spawn, because they're in the rivers and they're in the bottom and they're doing this and they're getting their groove on, they start to grey up a bit as well. So, if a trout survives the spawning, which a lot of them do here, they'll come back in the lake. They're skinny. They've probably lost up to 2/3 of their
Just
body
from
weight.
pumping.
Just from rooting. And
That's
the reed
the
is where
term.
the females. So the females get in there.
Yeah, they just
and
make a hole,
they
right?
dig their holes. Yeah. So they'll get in there and boom, boom, and there'll be a whole lot of boys lined up in the back, and they'll either eat the eggs when they come out, which is we can get into piggy, but
because
which
that's
is why we use roe imitations sometimes. And then you have resident fish, and they don't have a massive lake to feed up. And
Yeah,
a
right.
high population.
They don't
of trout
move that far in the
running out.
river.
No, so that's why catch and release is very important.
Beer. Another beer?
I'm
gonna have
I'd hate to dry out, and that would be
honey mead, Lone Bee sparkling mead. We did a lot of fishing, I think, as young people, right? And I think, and it's quite fun as a kid catching fish.
And people have got to understand that in the South Island at that particular time, there was no TV or power or anything like that, so you had to come up with things to amuse yourselves. And chasing sheep around the paddock every day
Have you tasted that?
got a bit boring.
Taste that. That's good, eh?
It actually feels healthy. It's like a health tonic.
It does. It's almost like a kombucha.
Really dangerous.
I like that actually. Yeah, it's good.
It's good.
Welcome strangers to the show. I'm the one who should be lying low. Saw the knives out, turned my back, heard the train coming, stayed right on that track. In the middle, in the middle, in the middle of a dream. I lost my shirt, I pawned my rings. I've done all the dumb things.
Yeah, them dumb things. This going out to my brothers down there in Dundale, dealing with that disaster that them guards are there and not jail. Thinking we getting that welfare, huh? Thinking we getting that healthcare, huh? Think about if it was your son. Now think about sending some help. Damn, yeah.
What was I going to say? I don't even know. I'm just fucking.
Why are you getting into fly fishing?
Goals. Everyone needs goals.
Yeah, but
Half this. It's a little beaker. It's about half.
Are we?
Tequila. I like tequila. It just gets you on another edge.
See,
You don't like tequila?
no, it's fucking not good.
Oh, that's good tequila though. You don't like tequila? The fish is 37. Is that different in different parts of the country?
Yeah.
Doc does Taupo, everything else is done by the fishing and game.
Fishing game.
I'm going to
That's
change
true.
the game. I'm here. I've got some technologically advanced ways to fish that you won't have even heard of. Worm fishing, putting a worm on a thing, floating it over a little float,
Yeah.
and sitting out there and then reading a book
Yeah.
with a little bowel.
Just the way it is.
No point talking to you about it.
No?
No point talking
Well,
it's fine. A lot of these
under
rules, like, let's
consideration.
don't even worry about the rules. I think you're going way.
One of those.
It was definitely one of the ones that the teachers would prefer not having in the class. It's in.
When you
That's a good way to catch fish.
New Zealand,
That's like a ridiculous statement.
you can't